He was just a discredited ranch hand, always pushed aside on the ranch, until he heard her declare in front of everyone, "I'll marry whoever tames my horse." When he stepped into the corral, the animal no one could even touch stopped and stared at him as if it recognized him. The ranch hand froze, his hands trembling, and everyone fell into absolutist silence. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment what part of the world you're watching from, because now I'm going to tell you everything. The afternoon sun was a white-hot coin in the sky over Sundance, Wyoming. In the corral behind the main house of the Bishop Ranch, dust hung thick in the air. A man lay sprawled on the ground, groaning. A few feet away, a massive black horse snorted, its hooves pawing the earth. Clara Bishop leaned against the fence, her arms crossed tight over her chest. She didn't move to help the man. Her green eyes were hard. A tall man with a wide smile and shiny boots stepped close to her. "A shame, Clara. A real shame. He had spirit, that one." "Spirit isn't enough, Travis," Clara said, her voice flat. She didn't look at him. Travis McCoy tipped his hat back. Maybe what that animal needs is a firm hand, a real understanding of who's in charge. Now she turned her head. She looked at him, then at the wild black horse that was circling the corral like a trapped shadow. "You want to be next? The line starts over there." A small crowd of ranch hands and folks from town had gathered. They watched, but they were quiet. They knew this scene. They had seen it many times over the past 2 years. Travis's smile didn't fade. "I might just take a turn, for the good of the town. Someone needs to settle this." "Nothing here needs settling," Clara said. She pushed off the fence and walked toward the corral gate. Her braid was a tight rope down her back. The man on the ground stumbled to his feet and limped out of the gate she held open. The black horse stopped its pacing. It stared at Clara. She stared back, a familiar knot of anger and pain tightening in her throat. Travis's voice was loud, meant for everyone to hear. "It's a tragedy is what it is. A fine ranch like this run by a woman all alone, a woman clinging to a ghost." The words hit the quiet air like a slap. Clara's whole body went still. She slowly closed the corral gate and latched it. Then she turned to face Travis and the watching people. "My brother is not a ghost," she said, her clear voice cutting the heat. "He is gone. This horse is what he left behind." She pointed at the animal without looking. "He is all that is left of Caleb Bishop, and he is untouchable." "A fine memorial," Travis said, shaking his head. "A killer in a corral." "He is not a killer," Clara snapped. "He is a testament." "To what?" "To the fact that some things can't be beaten into shape. Some things stay wild. Some losses are forever." She took a step toward the crowd, her gaze sweeping over them. "You all heard my promise. You all stood right here when I made it 2 years ago. I said I would marry the man who could ride that horse, who could truly tame him." A few people nodded. Old Sheriff Miller took his hat off and wiped his brow. "I made that promise because I believed no one could do it," Clara continued. Her eyes were bright with a fierce, wounded light. "I believe it now more than ever. This horse is my family. He is my wall. So come on, Travis McCoy, or anyone else. Try your hand. Show me your firm understanding." The challenge hung in the dusty air. Travis's confident smile finally flickered. He looked at the black horse. The animal had its ears pinned back, its dark eyes showing a circle of white. It was not just scared, it was angry. It was a living storm. "Today's not the day," Travis said, trying to sound easy. "My best saddle's back in Cody." A low murmur went through the crowd. They had heard excuses before. Clara gave a short, cold nod. "Any day is the day. The offer stands, until it doesn't." She walked away from the corral, away from the crowd, toward the big, empty ranch house. The people began to drift away, talking in low voices. Travis McCoy stood alone for a minute, watching her go, then looking at the horse. His eyes were no longer friendly. They were calculating. Inside the house, Clara stood at the kitchen window. She watched the last of the wagons leave. Her hands were clenched into fists so tight her knuckles were white. Out in the corral, the black horse stood still now, facing the house, alone. "I'm so mad at you," Clara whispered to the empty room, her eyes on the horse. "For coming back without him. For making me keep you. For making me remember every single day." She turned from the window. The silence of the house pressed in on her from all sides. It was the silence of 10 years. It was the silence of a missing laugh, a missing pair of boots by the door, a missing half of her own soul. Her promise was a lock. The horse was the key. And as long as the horse ran wild, her heart was safe. The ranch was safe. Everything was frozen just as it was the day Caleb vanished. She walked to the fireplace and looked at the only photograph on the mantel. Two teenagers, herself and her brother, arms slung over each other's shoulders, grinning in front of a much smaller, gentler-looking black colt. "Just keep the fences mended," she said to the picture, her voice a dry whisper. "Just keep the accounts. Don't feel, just do." Outside, as the sun began to dip, a lean ranch hand finished mending a fence post in the far pasture. He had watched the commotion from a distance. He always watched from a distance. His name was Jake Sullivan. He wiped the sweat from his face and looked toward the corral. He could just see the shape of the black horse. A deep, old ache twisted in his chest, a feeling he could never explain. It was more than fear. It was a homesick feeling for a place he was already standing in. He shoved the feeling down, like he always did. He put his tools away and walked slowly toward the bunkhouse, keeping his head down, making no sound at all. The bunkhouse was quiet that night, but the talk still hung in the air. Jake Sullivan sat on the edge of his narrow bed, rolling a smooth, flat stone between his fingers. It was a habit. The other two hands, a young man named Billy and an older one called Ron, were playing cards at the small table. "Travis McCoy's face," Billy said, chuckling. "I thought he was gonna pop a button on that fancy shirt. My best saddle's in Cody." "What a line." Ron grunted. "He'll be back. Men like that, they don't like being told no, especially by a horse." "Or by Clara Bishop," Billy said. He glanced toward Jake. "You see it, Jake? That horse near kicked poor Ben into next week." Jake just nodded. He kept his eyes on the stone in his hand. "Ah, don't bother asking him," Ron said, not unkindly. "Jake's a watcher, not a talker." It was true. Jake Sullivan had come to the Bishop Ranch 1 year ago. He gave his name, said he could work with horses, and asked for little. He did his jobs, mending fences, feeding stock, cleaning stalls, with a quiet focus. He spoke only when spoken to, and his answers were short. People in Sundance had decided he was simple, maybe a little slow from a hard life. They felt sorry for him in a distant way. They stopped trying to talk to him much. The next morning, Jake was in the barn before the sun was fully up. He was brushing down a calm bay mare named Daisy. He liked the early hours. The silence was his own. The barn door slid open with a loud rumble. Clara walked in, her boots making firm sounds on the wooden floor. Jake's hand stilled on the horse's flank. He did not turn around. He made himself very small, focusing on the brush strokes. He heard her stop at a stall a few down from him. He heard her sigh, a short, tired sound. He knew which stall she was at. The one with the fresh hay and clean water, but no horse in it. It was the stall they kept ready, a habit from 10 years ago, for a horse named Shadow. Jake's breath caught. The name flashed in his mind like a struck match. Asterisk Shadow. Asterisk. A feeling came with it. Laughter. Sugar cubes. The soft nose of a colt. Then, pain. A sharp, blinding pain in his head. He squeezed his eyes shut, his fingers finding the stone in his pocket. He held it tight until the feeling passed. When he opened his eyes, Clara was gone. The barn felt empty again. Later, he was fixing a hinge on a pasture gate. From there, he could see the main house. He saw Clara on the porch, talking with a woman who had a kind face. He knew it was Ellie Grant, the school teacher. Ellie came by sometimes. Clara's posture was stiff. She was nodding, but her arms were crossed. Ellie reached out and touched Clara's arm. Clara stepped back, just a little. Jake saw Ellie's shoulders drop. She said something else, then walked to her wagon and drove away. Clara stood alone on the porch for a long time, looking at nothing. Jake's chest ached. He knew that lonely look. He felt it inside himself every day. He wanted to walk up to the porch. He wanted to say something. But the fear was a cold stone in his gut, heavier than the one in his pocket. What would he say? The words were not there. Only the fog and the broken pieces of memories that felt like they belonged to someone else. At midday, the men gathered for lunch by the cookhouse. Travis McCoy's big, polished wagon rolled into the yard. He climbed out, his smile back in place. "Afternoon all," Travis called. He walked straight toward Clara, who was checking a harness. Clara, I've been thinking about your situation. Clara did not stop working. I don't have a situation, Travis. Sure you do. A ranch this size needs a firm future, a partner. He leaned against the fence near her. I'm a patient man, and I believe any problem can be solved, even a wild horse. Is that right? Clara's voice was ice. It is. I'm going to try for him. Next week, I've got a new bit coming. Special order. From where he sat, Jake felt a jolt of panic. It was a physical feeling, like a hand squeezing his heart. Asterisk, no. Asterisk. The word screamed inside his head. Asterisk, not him, not with a special bit. He must have made a sound because Ron looked at him. You all right, Jake? You're white as a sheet. Jake stood up quickly. He mumbled something about checking the water troughs and walked away. He could not listen anymore. He walked to the far corral, the one that was empty. He put his hands on the top rail and tried to breathe. Behind him, separated by two fences and a wide space, was the other corral. The black horse stood in the shade of a small shed, motionless. Jake looked at him. The horse's head was up, ears pricked. He was looking back. A memory came, not in pieces, but in a wave. It was so strong Jake's knees buckled. He held the fence to stay upright. Asterisk, he was a boy. The horse was a colt, all long legs and soft, curious eyes. The boy put a sugar cube on his flat palm. Easy, Shadow. Just take it. The colt's whiskers tickled his skin. A girl's voice laughed behind him. You're gonna spoil him rotten, Caleb. Caleb. The name was a key turning in a rusty lock. Jake, Caleb, gasped. The world spun. The man he was now and the boy he had been crashed together in his mind. He saw the face of the girl in the memory. It was Clara, young, smiling, her eyes bright. He looked from the horse to the house where the grown Clara stood. The fear was still there, bigger than ever. It was not just fear of being wrong. It was fear of being right, fear of the years that were lost, fear of the man he had become. He was here, he was home, and his sister was just a few hundred feet away, making a hard promise to the whole town to keep everyone out, to keep the world out, to keep him out, without even knowing it. The black horse, Midnight, took a few steps toward the shared fence line. He let out a soft, low nicker. It was a questioning sound. It was a lonely sound. Jake's hand went to his pocket. This time, he did not pull out the stone. He thought of the sugar cubes the cook kept in a tin by the coffee. He thought of a left pocket and a secret trick between a boy and his colt. He looked at the horse, and for the first time in 10 years, he did not see a wild ghost. He saw Shadow, and seeing him, he began terribly to remember himself. The following week, the same crowd gathered at the Bishop Corral. The mood was different. There was a tension in the air, a sense of something final. Travis McCoy stood in the center, holding a new, severe-looking bit. His friends from Cody stood near the fence, offering loud encouragement. Clara leaned on the fence post, her face a mask. She watched Travis, but her eyes kept drifting to the black horse. Midnight stood in the far corner, his body tense, watching every move. Today's the day, folks, Travis announced, his voice too loud. This ends here. He moved toward Midnight with a confident stride. The horse did not run. He waited. As Travis got closer, raising the bridle, Midnight's head snaked out, teeth bared. Travis jumped back. A few people laughed nervously, his face flushed red. All right, none of that now, Travis muttered. He tried a different approach, moving slowly. He got close enough to almost touch the horse's neck. For a second, it looked like he might succeed. Then, with a speed that was shocking, Midnight spun. His hind legs shot out in two powerful kicks. Travis saw them coming and threw himself sideways. The hooves missed him but struck the fence post with a sickening crack. Travis landed in the dirt, covered in dust, the fancy bit flying from his hand. The crowd gasped. Travis lay there, humiliated. His friends rushed to help him up. He shoved them away, his eyes blazing with fury. He pointed a dirty finger at Clara. This is a sham. That animal's a devil. No man can ride him. Clara's voice was calm and cold. Then I guess no man will marry me. The offer stands, Travis. You are free to try again when your pride mends. The crowd was quiet now. The spectacle was over. People began to turn away, talking in low tones. It was the same as always. Another failure. Clara felt the familiar grim satisfaction. Her walls stood strong. As the group started to break up, a soft voice cut through the murmur. "I would like to try." Everyone stopped. They looked. Jake Sullivan was standing by the gate. He was not looking at the crowd. He was looking at the horse. For a full 5 seconds, there was complete silence. Then a snicker came from one of Travis's friends. It spread. Soon half the crowd was laughing. The skinny, quiet ranch hand? It was a joke. Clara stared at him, bewildered. "Jake, no, get back to work." But Jake did not move. He was pale, but his eyes were clear. He was looking past her, at midnight. The horse was watching him too. Its head was high, its nostrils flaring. Sheriff Miller stepped forward. "Son, you saw what just happened. That's not a good idea." "I would like to try," Jake repeated. His voice was a little louder now, but it shook. Travis McCoy barked a harsh laugh. "Let the fool try. Let's have one more laugh for the day." The laughter grew. Ron and Billy, the other ranch hands, looked at the ground, embarrassed for him. Clara opened her mouth to order him away again, but something stopped her. It was the look on Jake's face. It was not the blank, distant look he usually had. It was full of a terrible, focused pain. And the horse was not pacing. He was perfectly still, staring at Jake. Slowly, without permission, Jake unlatched the corral gate and stepped it inside. He closed it behind him. The laughter died. The crowd pressed close to the fence, silent now. This was not funny anymore. This was dangerous. Jake stood just inside the gate. He made no move toward the horse. He did not hold out a rope or a hand. He simply stood there. He took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Midnight snorted. He pawed the ground once. Then he took a step forward. Then another. The people held their breath. The horse was not charging. He was walking. He walked slowly across the corral, his head lowered slightly, his eyes fixed on Jake. Clara's hands gripped the fencewood until her knuckles hurt. She could not believe what she was seeing. Midnight stopped an arm's length from Jake. The big animal sniffed the air. Jake, his whole body trembling, very slowly lifted his right hand. He held it flat, palm up. It was empty. The horse stretched out its neck. It nudged Jake's open hand with its nose. Then it let out a soft, blowing sound and lowered its head. A single tear traced a line through the dust on Jake's cheek. He reached out his other hand, his shaking fingers moving toward the horse's neck. He touched the tangled mane. The horse did not flinch. It leaned into the touch. The crowd was dead silent. No one moved. No one breathed. Jake bowed his head, pressing his forehead against the horse's powerful neck. His shoulders shook. He whispered something so quiet that only the horse could hear. Then he turned his face toward Clara. His eyes, full of tears, found hers across the corral. His voice was a broken whisper, but in the total quiet, every word carried. "Easy, Shadow," he said to the horse. Then he looked straight at Clara, and his next words were for her. "Remember the sugar cubes in your left pocket?" The world stopped. The sound of the wind, the creak of the fence, the breathing of the people, it all vanished. Clara's hands flew to her mouth. Her eyes went wide with a shock so deep it was physical. No one else knew that. No one else in the whole world. Sugar cubes in the left pocket. That was Caleb's secret trick. Their secret. A silly game with a gentle colt named Shadow. She looked from Jake's weeping eyes to the now calm horse. The wild ghost was gone. In its place was her brother's colt, and standing beside him was a man who knew a secret that had died 10 years ago. The truth, impossible and huge, crashed over her. The silence in the corral broke into a wave of sound. People shouted questions. They pushed closer to the fence. Clara could not hear them. Her whole world had narrowed to the man standing by the horse. Her feet moved without her telling them to. She opened the corral gate and walked inside. The crowd's noise faded to a dull roar in her ears. She stopped a few feet from Jake and the horse, from Caleb and Shadow. "Say it again," she whispered. Her voice did not sound like her own. Jake, Caleb, swallowed hard. Tears cut clean lines through the dirt on his face. "Sugar cubes, in your left pocket. You always said it ruined the line of my genes." A sob choked Clara. She took another step. Her hand reached out, trembling, and touched the horse's neck. The animal stood quietly, its eyes soft. "Shadow," she breathed. Then her eyes snapped back to the man. She searched his face, desperately looking past the scars, the tired lines, the years. She saw the shape of his nose, the curve of his ear, the blue of his eyes, her own eyes reflected back at her for the first time in 10 years. Caleb? The name was a question and a prayer. He nodded, a frantic, hopeful movement. It's me, Clara. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I left. A sound escaped her, part cry, part laugh. She stumbled forward and threw her arms around him. He held her tightly, his face buried in her shoulder, his body shaking. She could feel his bones, how thin he was. She could smell dust and hay and sweat, and underneath it a faint, forgotten scent that was just her brother. The crowd was in an uproar. Some people were cheering, some were crying. Others just stared, confused. Sheriff Miller climbed into the corral, his hand resting on his pistol. Clara, what in the world is happening here? Clara pulled back, but she kept one hand on Caleb's arm, as if he might vanish. It's him, Sheriff. It's Caleb. He's home. Now hold on, the sheriff said, his eyes wary. That's a mighty big claim. This man has been Jake Sullivan for a year. He's my brother, Clara said, her voice gaining strength. He knew about the sugar cubes. Only we knew. From the edge of the crowd, Travis McCoy shoved his way to the front. His face was dark with anger. That's nothing. A story he could have heard. This is a trick. Caleb flinched at the loud voice. He looked at Travis, then at the sheriff. It's no trick. My name is Caleb Bishop. I was taken from the North Ridge after I fell. Taken? Sheriff Miller asked. By who? Men, Caleb said, his voice dropping. Drifters, traitors. My head. It was hurt. I forgot everything. For years. He looked at Clara, pleading. I only started remembering when I came back here. When I saw the ranch. When I saw her. I was scared. Scared? Travis laughed, a harsh sound. Scared you'd be found out, more like. You're a fraud. You want her land. No, Caleb said, his voice rising for the first time. I just wanted to come home. The crowd was splitting. Friends of Clara's were smiling, moving forward. Travis's friends and the skeptical ones hung back, muttering. Ellie Grant pushed through and took Clara's free hand. Clara, is it true? It's true, Clara said. But even as she said it, a sliver of ice entered her heart. She looked at the man holding her. He felt real. He knew the secret. But 10 years was a long time. What if Travis was right? What if it was a cruel trick? The joy in her chest was so big it was terrifying. If it was taken away, it would destroy her. Sheriff Miller saw the doubt flash on her face. He saw the growing unrest in the crowd. He held up his hands. All right, everyone, settle down. This needs to be sorted out calmly. He turned to Caleb. Jake, or Caleb, I need you to come with me to the office. We need to talk this through, properly. Clara's grip tightened. No, he just got home. Clara, if he's who he says he is, no harm will come from talking, the sheriff said gently but firmly. And if he's not, we need to know that too, for your sake. Caleb looked at his sister. He saw the conflict in her eyes, the wild hope and the sudden, terrible fear. He nodded slowly. It's okay, Clara. I'll go. I'll tell him everything. He let go of her and turned to follow the sheriff. As he passed Travis, the bigger man stepped into his path. You're not fooling anyone, Travis spat in a low voice. Caleb kept his eyes on the ground and walked around him. Clara watched them go, her brother and the sheriff walking toward the town. The crowd began to disperse, buzzing with gossip. Ellie stayed by her side. What do you feel? Ellie asked softly. Clara watched the figure of her brother grow smaller. The warmth of his hug was still on her skin. The sound of his voice saying their secret was in her ears. I feel like my heart is going to burst, Clara whispered. And I feel like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff. A crowd followed Sheriff Miller and Caleb to the small sheriff's office on Sundance's main street. People spilled off the wooden sidewalks, talking all at once. Clara followed close behind, Ellie holding her arm. Before they reached the office door, Travis McCoy jumped up onto the edge of a water trough. He turned to face the crowd. Are you all blind? He shouted. The talking died down. That man is a liar and a thief. Sheriff Miller turned, his hand on Caleb's shoulder. Travis, get down and let the law handle this. The law? Travis pointed a finger at Caleb. He stole that horse's trust with tricks. I saw him. He didn't act like a cowboy. He whispered. He used soft words. That's not how you tame a wild animal. That's how you trick one that's been tricked before. A murmur went through the crowd. Some people nodded. Clara stepped forward. He didn't trick him. He knew him. How? Travis shot back. By spying? By listening to old stories in the saloon? He's a drifter. He heard a sad story about a lost boy and his horse, and he saw his chance. That's not true, Caleb said, his voice strained. Isn't it? Travis jumped down and walked right up to him. If you're Caleb Bishop, then where have you been for 10 years? Why come back now, just when Clara made a promise that would give a man her land? I didn't know about the promise, Caleb insisted. I just came home. Convenient. Travis turned to the crowd, spreading his arms. He shows up, works for a year to learn the lay of the land, then performs a miracle? And now we're all supposed to believe a fairy tale about amnesia? He's playing on Clara's grief. He's after the Bishop Ranch. The words hit Clara like blows. She looked at Caleb's pale, desperate face. She saw the doubt growing in the eyes of the people around her. Her own fear roared back to life. One of Travis's friends, a large man named Roy, shoved Caleb from behind. Answer him, liar! Caleb stumbled forward. Sheriff Miller moved between them. That's enough. Back off, Roy. But the push sparked something. Another man, confused and angry, grabbed Caleb's arm. My cousin looked for you for weeks on that ridge. We never found a thing. A wave of anger moved through the crowd. They felt fooled. They felt their pity had been used. Clara tried to push through. Stop it, leave him alone. It was chaos. Someone threw a punch. It missed Caleb but hit Sheriff Miller in the shoulder. The sheriff fell back. Travis saw his chance. With a roar, he lunged at Caleb, his fists clenched. Caleb, who was not a fighter, put his arms up. The two men crashed into the hitching post. Saddlebags fell. A blanket unrolled. As they struggled, a small, shiny object flew out of Caleb's fallen gear. It landed in the dust with a soft asterisk clink asterisk. It was a locket. A tiny, tarnished silver locket on a broken chain. The fight stopped. Everyone stared at it. Breathing hard, Travis bent down and picked it up. He pried it open with his thick fingers. His eyes went wide, then a cruel smile spread across his face. Well, look here, he said, his voice loud and triumphant. He held the locket high so everyone could see. Inside were two small photographs, faded but clear. One was of a young, smiling Clara. The other was of a teenage boy with bright eyes. Caleb. A gasp swept through the crowd. Clara's hand went to her throat. She had given Caleb that locket for his 16th birthday. He had worn it every day until the day he vanished. Travis snapped the locket shut. A drifter with a perfect keepsake? This isn't proof. This is a prop. He probably found this in the dirt years ago and kept it for a scheme just like this. The crowd's confusion turned to a single angry sound. They felt tricked. The locket was too perfect. Travis's lie made a terrible kind of sense to them. Sheriff Miller got to his feet, his face grim. He looked from the furious crowd to Caleb's heartbroken face. He made a decision. Jake Sullivan, the sheriff said, using the old name. I'm taking you into custody for your own safety and for questioning about the disappearance of Caleb Bishop. He took the locket from Travis's hand. No, Clara cried. Caleb looked at her, his eyes filled with tears and despair. Clara, I kept it. All these years I kept it. I didn't know why, but I kept it. Into the office now, the sheriff said firmly, taking Caleb's arm. He led him away from the mob, through the door of the jail. The crowd did not disperse. They stood in the street, muttering, their faces hard. Travis McCoy stood among them, his chest heaving with satisfaction. Clara stood frozen on the wooden sidewalk, the heat of the sun beating down on her. In her heart, the locket was the final proof. It was him. But in her head, Travis's poisonous words echoed. Asterisk. A prop. A scheme. She looked at the closed jail door. Her brother was behind it. Or a stranger was. She did not know which thought was more terrifying. The sun had set, painting the sky in shades of purple and gray. The town of Sundance was quiet, but Clara could feel the eyes on her as she walked down the main street toward the sheriff's office. A lantern glowed in the window. Sheriff Miller sat at his desk. He looked up when she entered. Jake, Caleb, sat on the narrow cot in the single jail cell at the back of the room. He stood up when he saw her. I need to talk to him, Sheriff, Clara said. Her voice was tired. The sheriff looked at her for a long moment. He nodded. I'll be on the porch. Leave the door open. He took his coffee cup and stepped outside. Clara walked to the iron bars of the cell. She just looked at him. The man she had known as Jake. The boy she had known as Caleb. In the quiet, she could hear the steady tick of the clock on the wall. "You gave me that locket," she said finally. "For your 16th birthday. I used my whole month's egg money to buy it in Cheyenne." He nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. "You wrapped it in a blue bandana. You said blue was for loyalty." Clara's breath hitched. She hadn't told anyone that, not ever. "What happened on the ridge, Caleb?" The name felt strange and wonderful on her tongue. He sat back down on the cot, his hands clasped between his knees. He stared at the floor. "I was checking the north fence line. Shadow was with me. He was just a colt. A storm was coming in fast. I turned to head back, and I slipped. The ground gave way. I fell down a steep part. I hit my head on a rock." He touched the scar on his temple, mostly hidden by his hair. Clara had never really noticed it before. "I don't know how long I was out," he continued, his voice flat. "When I woke up, it was dark. My head, it was all wrong. I didn't know my name. I didn't know where I was. I was just lost. And there were men, 3 of them, drifters. They said they found me. They said I owed them for saving me." He looked up at her, his eyes full of shame. "I was scared, and my mind was empty. I went with them. For years I worked for them. I did whatever they said. I was Jake. That's the name they gave me. The memories. They were gone. All I had was this feeling of being homesick for a place I couldn't picture." "Shadow came back without you," Clara whispered. "He was cut up and wild-eyed. We searched for weeks." "I'm sorry," he said, a tear falling. "I didn't mean to leave you. I just disappeared." "How did you remember?" she asked. "Slowly. Pieces. A smell of sagebrush after rain. The sound of a certain bird. Working with horses always felt right. Then, last year, the men I was with got into trouble with the law in Nebraska. I ran. I just started drifting west. Something was pulling me. I ended up here. I took a job at the ranch." He looked at her, pleading for her to understand. "When I saw you that first day, my heart nearly stopped. You were a woman, but you moved like my sister. The way you held your shoulders, the sound of your voice when you called to the dogs, it hurt to look at you. Why didn't you say anything?" Clara's voice broke. "I was scared," he said, standing up and gripping the bars. "My memories were coming back in floods, but they were mixed up. What if I was wrong? What if I wasn't him? And if I was, what would you think of me? I left you. I forgot you. I was a coward for years. How do you walk up to your family and say that?" He slid back down to the cot, exhausted. "Then I saw Midnight. I knew him instantly. It was Shadow, all grown up and so angry, lost just like me. And I heard about your promise. I thought, if I could reach him, if I could show you I remembered him, then maybe I wouldn't have to find the words I was too scared to say." Clara thought of him standing in the corral, so scared but so sure. She thought of the horse, the wild ghost, becoming gentle at his touch. She thought of the locket, kept for 10 hard years by a boy who didn't know why it was important. She unlocked the cell door with the key the sheriff had left on his desk. The metal creaked as she pushed it open. She walked inside and sat down next to him. She took his hand. It was calloused and rough. She remembered the soft hands of her teenage brother. This was what 10 years of being lost felt like. "You hid a frog in my sewing basket when we were 8, she said softly. A surprised, wet laugh escaped him. "You screamed for an hour. You always took the blame when I broke a plate," she said. "You always covered for me when I snuck out to watch the stars," he replied. She looked into his eyes, her twin's eyes, and she saw the boy she loved. She saw the pain of the lost years. She saw her brother. "Welcome home, Caleb," she whispered. He buried his face in her shoulder and cried. She held him, crying too. For the first time in 10 years, the hole in her life was filled. From the porch, Sheriff Miller heard the crying. He sipped his coffee and looked out at the dark town. He believed the story, but he also heard the low, angry voices of men still gathered outside the saloon. Travis McCoy's voice was the loudest. Knowing the truth and proving it to an angry town were 2 very different things. The night was deep and quiet at the Bishop Ranch. Travis McCoy's voice was the loudest. Knowing the truth and proving it to an angry town were 2 very different things. The night was deep and quiet at the Bishop Ranch. Clara sat at her kitchen table, unable to sleep. The feeling of her brother's arms around her was still real, But so was the cold fear of the angry crowd. She knew Travis McCoy. He would not let this go. In town, outside the Sundance Saloon, Travis McCoy poured whiskey into a glass. His friend Roy sat across from him. The other men had gone home. "The sheriff believes him," Roy said, his words slurred. "Clara believes him. It's over, Travis." Travis slammed his glass down. "It is not over. That man is a liar. And even if he's not, he's a coward who abandoned his sister. He doesn't deserve that land. I do. What can you do? The law has him." A slow, ugly smile spread on Travis's face. "The law is one old sheriff, and the jail is a wooden building with a stove. Accidents happen." Roy's eyes widened. "Travis, no. You going to stop me?" Travis's voice was low and dangerous. "Or are you going to help me make things right?" Down the street, in the sheriff's office, Caleb lay on the cot, staring at the ceiling. Sheriff Miller dozed in his chair by the door, his head nodding forward. Caleb heard a faint sound outside, though. He peered out into the dark street. "I don't see anything. Probably a dog." He walked back to his chair. "Try to get some sleep." But Caleb could not sleep. A deep sense of dread filled his stomach. He knew that feeling. It was the feeling he had for years when trouble was coming. Outside, at the back of the wooden building, Travis McCoy poured a thick, smelly liquid from a small bottle onto the dry timber wall. He pulled a match from his pocket. He struck it against the wood. The flame flared. He looked at the flame, then dropped it. The liquid caught fire with a soft asterisk whoosh asterisk. The flames began to crawl up the wall, hungry and fast. Travis and Roy ran around the side of the building and into the shadows of the alley across the street. They watched. Inside, Caleb smelled the smoke first. "Sheriff, fire!" Sheriff Miller jumped up. He smelled it too. He ran to the back room and saw the orange glow through the wall. Flames were already licking at the window frame. "Good Lord!" he yelled. He grabbed the keys from his desk and fumbled with the cell door. His hands were shaking. He got it open. Get out now!" Caleb ran out of the cell. Thick black smoke was filling the room. It was hard to breathe. "The town!" the sheriff coughed. "I have to wake the town." He ran out the front door, ringing the big bell on the porch. "Fire! Fire at the jail!" The loud clanging split the night. Lights came on in windows up and down the street. People began to pour out of their homes. From her ranch porch, Clara saw the orange glow in the distance. It was in the direction of town. Her blood went cold. She knew. She just knew. She did not saddle a horse. She ran to the barn, grabbed a halter, and jumped onto the back of her old, gentle mare. She kicked her heels and they took off toward the light at a gallop. The town was chaos. People ran with buckets of water from the pump. The sheriff's office was a tower of flame. The heat was intense. Sheriff Miller was organizing a bucket line. "It's too late for the building. Save the ones next to it." Clara slid off her horse. She grabbed the sheriff's arm. "Where is he? Where's Caleb?" The sheriff's face was black with soot. "He was right behind me. He must be out here." But Clara did not see him in the crowd of frantic faces. She saw Travis McCoy passing a bucket, a look of fake concern on his face. Their eyes met. In his eyes, she saw a flash of triumph. He had not meant to burn the building. He had meant to burn what was inside it. While everyone was focused on the fire, no one was watching the jail door. Clara ran toward it. The heat blasted her skin. "Clara, no!" the sheriff shouted. She pulled her shirt up over her nose and pushed through the door into the burning front room. The smoke was thick and blinding. "Caleb!" she screamed, her voice a raw cough. A weak cough answered her from the floor near the cell. He was curled up, trapped by a fallen beam. The fire was all around him. Clara did not think. She grabbed the end of the burning beam. The heat seared her hands, but she heaved with all her strength. It moved just enough. She reached in, grabbed her brother's shirt, and pulled him out. She half-dragged, half-carried him through the smoke, out the door, and into the cool night air. They both collapsed on the ground, coughing and gasping. The sheriff ran to them. "You fools! You could have been killed!" Clara looked at Caleb, his face smudged with soot but alive. Then she looked across the crowd at Travis McCoy. He was staring at them, his plan undone, his face now a mask of pure fury. Clara knew the fire was not an accident, and she knew the real danger was not over. It was standing 50 feet away and it was coming for them. "We have to go, now," Clara gasped, pulling Caleb to his feet. Her hands were red and painful, but she ignored them. The sheriff was torn, looking from them to the burning building. "Go where? I need statements. This was set, I know it was." "And he's right there," Clara said, pointing at Travis, who was already melting back into the crowd. "Arrest him, but we are not staying here." Caleb coughed, his eyes streaming. "He's right, Clara. We should stay with the sheriff." "No," she said, her voice fierce. She saw the men clustering around Travis, their faces angry and confused in the firelight. The mood of the crowd was a spark ready to catch. "They wanted you in a cell before. Now they'll say you started the fire to escape. We're going home." Sheriff Miller saw the truth in her words. He gave a sharp nod. "Go. Get to your ranch and lock the gates. I'll handle this. I'll come for you when it's safe." Clara did not wait. She pulled Caleb by the arm, away from the light and the noise, into the darkness between two buildings. They ran toward the livery stable where the horses were kept. "Shadow," Caleb wheezed as they ran. "We need Shadow." "The corral's behind the blacksmith's," Clara said. They found the corral. The black horse was pacing, nervous from the smoke and the distant shouts. He let out a high, worried whinny when he saw them. Caleb went straight to the gate. He did not hesitate. He climbed the fence and dropped inside. "Shadow," he called, his voice calm and low. "Easy, boy. It's just noise." The horse trotted over to him, its head snorting. Caleb put his hands on the animal's face, speaking softly. Clara watched, her heart pounding. She saw the boy from 10 years ago, comforting his frightened colt. "We need a bridle," Clara said, looking around. There was none. The men who tried to tame him never left gear inside. "It's all right," Caleb said. He took off his belt. In a few quick moves, he looped it around the horse's nose and head, making a simple halter. He gripped the leather end. "We'll have to ride bareback. Can you do it?" "I can do it," Clara said. She climbed the fence. Caleb brought Shadow close to the rail. Clara got on first, sitting far forward. Caleb swung up behind her, his arms around her waist to hold the belt reins. "Go, Shadow," Caleb whispered, nudging with his heels. The big horse leaped forward. He shot out of the open corral gate and into the night. They did not take the main road. They cut behind the buildings, heading for the open land that led to the Bishop Ranch. The cold air stung their burned lungs. Clara leaned low over Shadow's neck. The horse ran with a smooth, powerful speed she did not remember. He was running for home too. Behind them, back in the town, Travis McCoy broke away from the crowd. He ran to the livery and saddled his own horse, a fast chestnut gelding. He had seen them run. He knew where they were going. "You two," he yelled at Roy and another man. "With me. That liar is escaping." He did not wait to see if they followed. He kicked his horse and tore out of town, following the path he guessed they would take. On the open plain, Clara looked back. She saw a single pinpoint of light leave the town, a lantern on a horse moving fast. "He's coming," she said. Caleb held on tighter. "Just ride." They urged Shadow on. The land was a blur of darkness. The only sounds were the pounding hooves and their own ragged breath. The lights of the Bishop Ranch appeared in the distance, a single warm glow. They reached the ranch yard and slid off the horse. Both of them stumbled, their legs weak. Shadow was lathered and blowing hard. Clara ran to the house and came back with a rifle. She handed it to Caleb. He looked at it, then at her. I'm not good with these." "You'll have to be," she said. She took another for herself. "We can't just hide. He'll burn this place down around us." They heard the sound of a horse approaching at a gallop. Only one. Travis had outridden his friends. "The barn," Clara said. "We have the high ground in the loft." They ran into the big dark barn, pulling Shadow in with them. They left the main doors open, a black mouth in the night. Travis's horse skidded to a stop in the yard. He saw the open barn doors. He smiled a mean, hard smile. He thought they were trapped. He drew a long knife from his belt and stepped inside, into the deep dark. The inside of the barn was black as pitch. The only light came from the moon through the open doors. "Come on out," Travis McCoy's voice echoed in the dark space. "You're just delaying the inevitable. This land will be mine, one way or another." From the hayloft above, Clara and Caleb crouched. Clara held her rifle ready. Caleb held his, but his hands were shaking. Travis took a few steps forward, his boots crunching on the old straw. "I know you're in here. I can hear you breathing." A soft snort came from the far stall. Shadow was there. Travis turned toward the sound, his knife glinting. "There you are, you devil." "Leave him alone, Travis," Clara's voice rang out from above. Travis looked up, squinting into the dark loft. He saw them. A mean smile spread across his face. He found a ladder against the wall and started to climb. Clara aimed her rifle down. "Stop right there. I will shoot you." "You won't," Travis grunted, climbing higher. "You're a rancher, not a killer. And your brother there. He's nothing at all." Caleb flinched at the words. He looked at the rifle in his hands, a tool he never learned to use. Travis reached the top of the ladder. His head and shoulders appeared over the loft floor. Clara stood her ground, the rifle pointed at his chest. "Last warning, Travis." Travis ignored her. He swung a leg over onto the loft floor. He was up. Clara's finger tightened on the trigger, but she couldn't pull it. He was right. She couldn't just shoot a man. Travis saw her hesitation and laughed. He lunged for her rifle. That's when Caleb moved. It wasn't a fighter's move. It was a desperate, clumsy shove. He dropped his own rifle and pushed Travis from the side as the man reached for Clara. Travis was bigger and stronger. He grabbed Caleb by the shirt and threw him hard against a stack of hay bales. Caleb fell, the air knocked out of him. "Pathetic," Travis spat. He turned back to Clara, easily wresting the rifle from her hands. He threw it over the edge of the loft. It clattered on the floor below. "You think you won?" Clara said, her voice fierce. "You think this makes you a man? You're just a thief in the night." "I'm taking what should have been mine," Travis roared. He grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in. "And I'm getting rid of your little ghost once and for all." He dragged her toward the ladder, planning to take her down, to deal with Caleb after. Caleb struggled to his knees, gasping. He saw his sister fighting, saw the terror in her eyes. A memory flashed. Not a memory of a fight, but of a game. A childhood game of tag in this very barn. A rope. A pulley for lifting hay. His eyes darted to the old rope coiled near the loft's edge. It was tied to a thick beam, its other end dangling down to the main floor. "Shadow," Caleb yelled, his voice suddenly clear and strong. Not a whisper, a command. Down below, the black horse's head shot up. Travis paused, confused by the shout. Caleb didn't go for another weapon. He ran to the rope. He grabbed the dangling end that was near the floor below and gave it a hard, sharp pull. At the same time, he whistled, a specific two-note whistle. Shadow knew that whistle. It meant *run*. The big horse burst from his stall. He ran straight for the barn doors, right under the dangling rope Caleb was holding. As Shadow passed underneath, Caleb let go of the rope. The loop at the end swung down like a pendulum. It didn't hit the horse. It wasn't meant to. It swung across the barn floor, low and fast. Travis, from his spot on the loft, couldn't see what was happening below. He shook Clara. "What was that? What are you doing?" Caleb didn't answer him. He looked at Clara. "The post," he shouted. "By the doors." Clara understood. She stopped fighting Travis for a second. With all her strength, she stomped her boot down on his foot. Travis yelled in pain and let go of her arm. That was all the time she needed. She ran to the side of the loft where a thick post connected to the wall. A heavy leather strap hung there, used to secure the big doors from up here. She grabbed it. Caleb had already grabbed the other end of the rope, the end tied to the beam. He threw it across the loft to her. Travis lunged for Caleb again. Clara caught the rope. In one smooth motion, she looped it through the leather strap and threw the end back to her brother. Caleb caught it. They pulled the rope tight between them, creating a taut line across the open front of the loft, right at chest level. Travis was running at Caleb, his knife raised. He did not see the rope until it was too late. It caught him across the chest. The force knocked him backward. His feet went out from under him. With a strangled cry, he fell over the edge of the loft. He did not fall to the hard floor. He fell into the loop of the other rope, the one Caleb had dropped, which now hung in the air. It caught him under his arms. He dangled there, 6 feet off the ground, kicking and shouting. Below him, Shadow stood calmly, as if he had done his job perfectly. Clara and Caleb looked over the edge of the loft at the man hanging in the rope trap. He was caught, helpless. The sound of horses arrived outside. Sheriff Miller and 2 other men rode into the yard, their guns drawn. They saw the open barn and Travis McCoy swinging in a rope. The sheriff stepped inside, looking from the dangling Travis to Clara and Caleb in the loft. A slow smile broke across his soot-streaked face. "Well," he said, "looks like you two had everything under control." Sheriff Miller and his men cut Travis down from the rope. They tied his hands behind his back. Travis's face was purple with rage. "They attacked me," he shouted. "This is assault." "Your friends Roy and Jed are already in my new office at Travis," Sheriff Miller said, his voice tired but firm. "They're telling me all about the fire, how you started it to cover up a murder. You're not going anywhere but a real jail." The fight seemed to drain out of Travis all at once. He hung his head as the sheriff led him away. As the first light of morning touched the sky, people from town began to arrive at the Bishop Ranch. They came in wagons and on horses. They gathered in the yard, their faces solemn. Ellie Grant stepped forward first. She walked up to the porch where Clara and Caleb stood side by side. Clara's hands were bandaged. Caleb stood straight, no longer trying to make himself small. "Clara," Ellie said. "Caleb, the whole town knows the truth now. About the fire, about everything." She looked down, ashamed. "I am so sorry we doubted you. I am so sorry you were alone in that jail, Caleb. We were wrong." One by one, others came forward. The man who had grabbed Caleb's arm in the street, the woman who had called him a liar. They apologized. They offered handshakes. They brought pies and bread. Caleb accepted each apology quietly. "Thank you," he said, over and over. When the crowd finally began to thin, Clara turned to them. Her voice carried across the quiet yard. "My promise," she said. "The one I made about the horse and marriage." She paused, taking a deep breath. "That promise is over. It was made by someone who was lost. I was protecting a ghost. But my brother is not a ghost. He is home. My family was found. It was not one. It does not need to be one." A murmur of understanding went through the people. They nodded. They smiled. Later that day, with the house empty, Clara and Caleb sat at the big kitchen table, the same table where they had eaten as children. "What do we do now?" Caleb asked. His voice was still soft, but it was no longer the voice of Jake Sullivan, the drifter. "We run the ranch," Clara said simply. "Together, like we were supposed to." She pushed a large ledger book across the table to him. "These are the accounts, the bills, the herd numbers. Half of it is yours." Caleb looked at the book, then at his sister. "I don't know how to do any of that." "I'll teach you," she said. "And you can teach me how to talk to the horses like you do. The real way, not the breaking way, the understanding way." A real smile, the first one Clara had seen in 10 years, touched Caleb's lips. "I think I can do that." The next morning, Clara found Caleb in the barn. He was not in his old work clothes. He was in a pair of their father's old pants and a clean shirt. He was brushing Shadow with long, steady strokes. The horse's coat was already looking softer. "He doesn't look like a midnight anymore," Clara said, leaning on the stall door. Caleb shook his head. "No, he never did." He patted the horse's neck. "He's just Shadow. He remembers who he is now." "So do you," Clara said. Caleb nodded. "So do I." They walked out of the barn together. The morning sun was warm. In the pasture, Shadow grazed peacefully on the green grass. He was no longer a furious ghost in a corral. He was a horse at home. Clara pointed to a broken section of fence line. "That's the first thing that needs mending." Caleb followed her gaze. "All right, I'll get the tools and the posts." He did not walk with his head down. He did not hide. He walked with purpose toward the tool shed, his shoulders squared. Clara watched him go, a feeling of quiet peace settling over her heart for the first time in a very long time. The town of Sundance learned a lesson that year. They learned that the strongest cowboys are not always the loudest. They learned that love is not about proving your strength. It is about remembering who you are and helping others remember who they are too. And on the Bishop Ranch, the fences got mended, the accounts got kept, and the two people who were once lost found their future in the very place they had always called home.